for adjustment of a stationary and rotating blade right now. The best thing to do, I find, is to get a flat surface and lay the cutter assembly on a flat surface, and be careful when handling the cutter assembly so you don't wind up with a band-aid on your finger like I currently have. And the first thing you want to do is take the retaining ring off. I find it easier to take the retaining ring off the side of the gear side, simply because you can use the flywheel and you have much more of a handle to pull the cutter assembly out. You want to loosen the set screw on the small gear, loosen the set screw on the rotating blade, and then everything simply slides right out. Now you don't need to worry about removing the bushing on this side. You can just kind of sit that there. Now what you do is, if you are replacing the rotating blade, you would just simply slide a new rotating blade on. If you're turning the rotating blade, you can just turn it and have a brand new cutting edge on this side. Then you can take the shaft, push it through there, take the new blade, slide it on, and also you'll notice the flat parts on the shaft. They are very important because that's where you want to make sure you tighten all the set screws on. You slide the shaft through there, take your flat bearing, push it on there, take the flywheel. Again, notice how I have the flat facing towards me. You take the small gear, you push that up flush against the side, and then you want to tighten down the set screw. Now what you can use is the set screw for the flywheel and the set screw for the gear as a guide to where you want to tighten the set screw down, because the flats are on the same side all the way across the shaft. You want to center the rotating blade and then hand tighten down, and you can see where it's lined up with the other two set screws, and tighten that down. And that would be replacing and or turning a rotating blade. Now this is your stationary blade. If you were going to replace or turn a stationary blade, you would do the same thing. It's a number 6 socket head cap screw that you would simply remove both of the socket cap screws. And you'll notice once I have this removed, there's 2 other set screws mounted to the housing. What these are adjustments for the stationary blade. By turning those clockwise, pulls the blade closer to the rotating blade. Counterclockwise would pull it further apart. The ideal setup is the rotating blade right up against but not touching the stationary blade. So what we do here in this instance, we're just turning the stationary blade. If you were to put a new one on, you could put it on either side. This one we're going to turn, put the new edge on the top. Just lay that on there, it lines up. Then you take your socket cap screws, you push those back in there, or put those back on, I should say. And at this point, you want to leave those loose. If you ever were replacing the blade, now you can see where you have a gap developed there. So by tightening these down, there your stationary blade gets pulled in closer. Right now this is lined up exactly where it needs to be lined up, where you can see that there is no light between the rotating and stationary blade. It may be difficult to see with the video, but ideally the clearance there is less than 1/1000th of an inch. It's basically the thickness of a piece of a ticket. Now, as you can see here, if I was to loosen these socket cap screws,
Open it up and turn it towards the light a little bit, the other way, towards the light. Up and towards the light, yeah.
okay.
There you go.
And now what I'm doing here is backing off the set screw. And you can see by backing that set screw off and tightening it down, now you have a gap there. You do not want that. The rotating needs to be right up against but not touching the stationary. To adjust this, you just want to loosen those a little bit. You don't have to do it a lot. And you just turn this. And what I find is I just press up against that. And I can still have a little bit more. Pressing up against that is the same as this socket cap screw being tightened down. It can be a bit of a tedious task, but once you do it a couple times, you will get used to it. Now with that tightened down, you can still turn the set screw, and you can see where now it is right up against but not touching. And then you can hand tighten that down, and everything is adjusted properly.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to